In 1858, oil was first produced in Canada. It was in the village of Black Springs, Ontario, that James Williams set out to dig a water well, but struck oil instead. This discovery triggered North America's first oil rush. With the rapid growth of industry and vehicle use, the nation's dependency on oil production has steadily escalated over the years. By the late 1980s, Canada was consuming 1 billion liters of lubricating oil a year. Today in North America, we consume over 21 million barrels of oil every day. And with all this progress in consumption came extreme levels of potentially hazardous used oil materials, oil, filters, and plastic containers.
It started out very much in 1988, where the CCME indicated that there was an issue with waste oil management, and they tasked CPPI to look into the issue and come up with a solution. CPPI did form a used oil task force to address the issue, and it did culminate in a 1991 Montreal meeting where a lot of the focus moved from government to the retailers or the first sellers of used oils.
Used oil especially has the heavy metals in it from the engine, and those are the things that make it hazardous. So that is not what you want on the roads and being dripped through into the water table, is those heavy metals. These materials are the ones that have the most potential to cause damage in the environment.
1 liter of used oil can contaminate 1 million liters of fresh water, so that puts quite a challenge ahead for us. Going to these meetings in Regina, the first thing that struck me was that there's a whole bunch of people involved in this whole thing. Farmers are thinking, gee whiz, this is something that's really not that big a deal. You can dump used oil on the road. If you don't like those pesky gophers, just dump it down a gopher hole. You had environmentalists who are saying, this is a real difficult issue. We got to get this stuff out of the environment. You had urban and municipal government saying, this is a problem in our landfills. You had the provincial government saying, this is something we better solve.
There was a lot of debate about a lot of debate and controversy about what we should be doing and how we should be doing it and who should be doing it. And by September 1993, it was pretty clear that governments were putting pressure on the industry to do something. And so we had a very intense process for about a year we had 2-day meetings every 6 weeks to bash out exactly how we were going to do it. I cannot emphasize enough the key point that Western Canada Used Oil Container Filter Task Force process, that was the pivot point for this whole program. We went from not knowing what we were doing and having a lot of controversy in September 1993 to having a plan in June 1994 that was printed and agreed to by the stakeholders involved, and then we were on an implementation course. And so it was that really just 9 months. It sounds like, well, in the course of a 25-year program, 9 months is nothing, but that was the key 9 months in my view.
Through the Waste Management Advisory Group and the collection committee that was set up to look at used oil materials collection in Saskatchewan, started right away with determining what the basis were, what were the key core things that were needed as a part of a program. As the collection committee got to the point of having the final package ready to go to the province of Saskatchewan, the Western Canada Task Force, which was industry members from across Canada, put together this group to look at what is the best program for Canada. We were able to move that program through that group in the same form and with the same key principles and foundation as what we put together in Saskatchewan. The key thing was to get industry on side as well as government, that anybody that used oil, there was a need to have a program to address the collection of those used oil materials. The next key thing was the user pay concept, and that the costs of a stewardship program to collect used oil materials needed to be paid by the actual user of the product. The next step after that was to form an association and get its membership in place, and the hiring of an executive director. That was completed roughly in 1996. By 1997, the program was started up on the 1st of September of 1997.
Both the Alberta and Saskatchewan used oil programs were launched in 1997. The success of those programs was recognized not only nationally but internationally, and I know that some of the individuals involved with the programs were invited down to speak at the OECD workshops that were held both in Washington and Tokyo. And there was very much a recognition internationally about the success of the Canadian programs, and they have been emulated up to the current conditions now for different programs around the world.
The opportunity came in Manitoba as the third of the three in the start with Alberta and Saskatchewan that they regulated. So government and industry asked me if I would take that on. And having the experience in selling and having the experience and then at the other end of refining the used oil, I then happily took on that assignment there of managing the program for Manitoba.
Where the four Western provinces got together, contracted a firm called Bearing Point, who took a look at this from a totally independent point of view. And what they did was they benchmarked this program from many different things. But one of the really interesting parts of the program review, they went out to 12 programs around the world and said, how are these programs comparing to how things are working around the world? Well, if you can imagine, we came out right at the top, or maybe even a little bit above the top. On the working level, the executive directors started working together very closely because the die was set through the Western Canada Task Force. And having the executive directors work together pretty much even on a daily basis, phoning back and forth, how does this work, how does this not work, how can we make this work better? That, I think, was very good in having us work together nationally and then working together at a larger policy level through the Western Canada Task Force, which later became the National Used Oil Material Advisory Council, or NUMAC.
One of the sidelines or side benefits that's come out of having the National Used Oil Management Council is that it's given us some punch in the country. And when we approach new provinces about a regulation for used oil materials, we can speak with a national voice.
And it was finally in 2005 that Quebec became the fifth province after Western Canada to put a very similar system to what we had in place. And this was an important aspect. We wanted, and we still want, to have coast to coast a system that's going to be very similar. Because when you think of it, big companies like the one I represent do cover all of Canada. So for them, having different systems to deal with in different provinces would be the worst of possible situation. And now, luckily, due to the leadership of Western Canada initially, followed by us, we have a system soon to be coast to coast with Atlantic Canada now coming on board that's going to be very similar, with some differences, but very similar in its principles.
We have the Maritimes in progress right now. Prince Edward Island should be coming on this year, and we're looking at Nova Scotia and Newfoundland Labrador within the next couple of years.
One of the things that we are proud of is the four eastern provinces all together are managed by one board. Okay, only one board for the four provinces, even if they are managed separately regarding the collection rate, the money, or the budget, all this stuff. But there's only one board, and the board members are coming from the different provinces, the four eastern provinces.
The environmental handling charge depot system has proven to be such a success that I don't think people are talking about any other alternatives, at least I hope they're not, because the program has proven to work out well. But if you go back to 1993, sure, there were people proposing deposit refund systems, and certainly when you look at the bottle depots who do operate on a deposit refund system for beverage containers, that's naturally how people were thinking they might want to go. But it doesn't make sense because basically you're handling a mysterious brown liquid. That's what people are returning to you, mysterious brown liquid. If you're going to start paying people to bring you mysterious brown liquids, there's going to be a lot of extenders put in, and that's going to lead to a lot of problems. It's one thing if you're seeking bottles that have contained milk or pop. It's something entirely different if you're going to seek containers that potentially have contained hazardous waste. You don't want to have your vulnerable people dumpster diving for hazardous waste. So deposit refund system just does not make sense for oil containers, oil filters.
But how are you going to deal with 10,000 generators who are generating this material, getting it to 20 or 30 processors? Well, got involved with the collectors, and the collectors are the truckers that go around and pick up this material from all the generators and get it off to recycling facilities. Well, there may have been enough money to get a little bit of oil out of the environment, but filters and containers never had intrinsic enough value in their materials. So therefore, you needed something to drive that. And going through all these discussions, turned out the collectors saying, yeah, you pay us the money, we'll get the job done. And that led to then what was return incentives. Return incentives are a collection incentive paid for the collectors to get this material out of the environment. If the economics are such that their prices are really good for used oil, they'll flow material through to the generators, which is then another incentive for material to come out of the environment.
Buildup and the recovery rates have been very remarkable. I think there's recovery rates of up to 90% being demonstrated in each of the provinces.
Having as many convenient options for people as possible does increase recovery. And it's one thing to say, don't throw it down the storm drain, but then you have to give them, do this instead. And this program gives them that option. So it's really good from that perspective.
Back when the regulatory thing came in, I can tell you in Manitoba, there was only 7 million liters recovered. Now we recover like 15. So you say, where did the rest of that go? Well, most of it must have went where it shouldn't have gone.
It's really well-to-wheel, where we want our product to be managed responsibly from the moment we produce this product that will have an impact on the environment, but ensuring that it's well managed and well disposed until the very end of the life of the product.
I think the used oil associations and the way the members have been working is a great demonstration of how green our industry is and how much greener it can be. And I think that's been a real compliment to the industry. And I think the fact that you've got used oil being recycled, re-refined, effectively you're giving it a second life.
So used oil, a lot of it goes for re-refining right now, goes into base oil, so we turn back into new oil again. Used oil filters are crushed and go off to a processor right here in Saskatchewan, where they're turned back into metal products. Plastic containers are ground, oil removed from it, they're turned back into pellets, and those pellets then go off to various uses like making lawn and garden furniture, plastic lumber, or very importantly, go right back into making plastic oil containers again. So you've completely closed the loop with oil, with filters, and with containers. So antifreeze was added to the program just last year. So now people can now recycle their antifreeze as well. So there's been a lot of tremendous work done on this. TV ads, radio, print, and nowadays people are very plugged in to the internet.
Our responsibility in this whole thing, aside from maximizing return on recycling, is not sitting here minding the store. Our responsibility is to keep looking at breaking new ground. You get your rubber boots on and get out there. And you can't effectively manage this business from the ivory tower. You got to get there.
When I think back and look at how these companies agreed to work together and leave their own special interests aside and think for the good of the province or the country to put this system in place, it's truly amazing.
I think it's the simplicity and the effectiveness of the programs and that the fact that industry is very much involved with it that has been a real success for the programs.
Sitting here today, 20 years plus after this whole concept was first developed, to me I'm just amazed at how well it's working, how simple the program was laid out, and it just goes to prove if you design something simple and keep it simple, it can achieve all the objectives that were laid out there at the very beginning.